Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our driver ratings for the Dutch Grand Prix. We're going to give each driver a score between 1 and 10 for their race. There's going to be a few high scores here this weekend. I can feel it in me bones. And also, I've written down all the numbers on a piece of paper in front of me, so I already know what the scores are. But before we get into that, remember to like and subscribe, and of course, a huge shout out to the members: Dakota, The Joyous James, Ryan Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, Michael Johnson, Mr. Eurovision 1986, Philip Doganzik, No Edam on Sandwiches, Sarah Jowett, and Andy Jones. My piece of paper with the members' names fell off the wall as I started recording the video. My goodness, the timing on there. Right, let's get into this. And as always, we will start with our favourite team, Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, and it was a bad weekend for them. Their streak of 6 races with points in a row came to an end. Let's start by looking more closely at the race of Gabriele Bortoleto. Now, he had a decent qualifying, to be fair, qualified in 13th place, but a dreadful start saw him drop down to 19th, then was just kind of fighting up the field from there, ended up finishing in P15. Now, I do believe towards the end of the race he was in quite a high position, but they had just left him out over the last safety car, so he has dropped like a stone, then pitted after the safety car, and then was just kind of just at the back. I mean, overall, I'm just going to give Bortoleto a 4. It feels a bit harsh because I don't think it was fully his fault, the bad weekend. But overall, you can't really give that high of a score for that race. Across to his teammate, Nico Hulkenberg. Another bad qualifying for him, saw him start the race in 17th place. Then from there, he did gain a few places to finish up in 14th. But really, there's nothing that I can really remember about his race at all. Realistically, I think the Sauber team, who have been quite good on strategy recently, especially the amazing strategy they pulled in Silverstone to get Hulk on the podium, really, this week, nothing really to shout about. Feels like they got a lot of decisions wrong. Saw him finishing up in 14th place. Going to give him a 4 as well. Speaking of someone who got something right, is this man, Alex Albon. Bad qualifying for him. Saw him start in 15th place. He said in his interview after qualifying that they kind of just got the timing wrong, and by the time they came to do their fast lap, the tyres had lost their heat and was out the performance window. So started down in 15th place, but would finish in 5th. A wonderful result for him. The 4th time he's finished 5th this year so far. Some really good points for the Williams team. And as well, if you track his race, what's really quite interesting is that a lot of the time he doesn't really gain much from the safety cars. It's kind of around the safety cars where he gains a lot of his performance. So yeah, really, really good job from Alex Albon. We are obviously going to give him a 10 out of 10 for this race. Across to Carlos Sainz now, who was incredibly disappointed after the race weekend. A good qualifying for him sees him start in 9th place, and it was a decent start to the race as well. He was up in that top 10. He was ahead of Alex Albon in terms of on track, in terms of position. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, he was ahead of his teammates. He was on track to score some really good points for the team. And then it all kind of fell apart. Got hit by Liam Lawson off of the back of the safety car restart. Then got blamed for that and got a penalty on top of that as well, which like I said yesterday, I still think it's very harsh. I've watched it back again. I've seen some people say, well, actually, if you look at it this way, and I've looked at it that way, and I still don't agree. It was either a racing incident or a penalty for Liam Lawson for me, and it wasn't either of them. They gave the penalty to Carlos Sainz, and I think the thing that is the most damning about the stewards is that they refused to see Carlos Sainz after the race. He said that the stewards say their doors are always open, but they were not open to Carlos Sainz yesterday when he wanted to go and discuss the penalty. The absolute cowards. But yeah, Carlos Sainz ended up finishing in 13th place. So despite everything, still had a pretty decent recovery job to get back to 13th. But this should have been 5th. He was ahead of Albon at that point in the race. He should have been in that top 5. It should have been his best result in the Williams. I've just thrown my pen on the floor by accident. I've got another pen though, don't you worry. Yeah, it should have been his best result in the Williams. It wasn't. It was outside of his control. There wasn't much he could do. Still a decent job in the car. I'm going to give him a 6. Hopefully he can turn this around this weekend in Italy. Across to the man of the hour, the man with the power, Isaac Hadjar. My goodness, what a performance from him, and came out of absolutely nowhere. I think he only did a handful of laps in FP1, and then through FP2, FP3, didn't really show anything out of the ordinary, a typical Racing Bulls performance throughout FP2 and FP3. You weren't sat there thinking, wow, this is the weekend. But then qualifying, hooked it up really well. Great qualifying to start the race in 4th place. Really good start to the race as well. And then from there, it was just defend. Fighting off against George Russell, fighting against Charles Leclerc. At one point, he's on the back of Max Verstappen, but never really had the pace to challenge for that additional place. But overall, I think he won't mind at all because he finished in P3, his first ever podium. A fantastic job from Isaac Hadjar. And I was looking it up before. I believe this is his 14th race, which means it took him the exact same amount of races that it took Alain Prost to get his first Formula 1 podium as well. So, who knows? Can he continue on the trajectory of Alain Prost? We'll wait and see. But yeah, he should be tremendously happy with himself, even if he did break the trophy afterwards. Really, really good stuff. Amazing from Isaac Hadjar. A 10 out of 10. Isaac, my little tip for you, if your phone rings, it says helmet Marco on it, don't pick it up. Let it go to voicemail, and then say, I don't check my voicemail, it's 2025, and move on. Stay in the Racing Bulls team, it's safe there. Liam Lawson now. And you know what? Yeah, okay. Well, a good qualifying for Lawson saw him in P8. And then, of course, we've already discussed it with Carlos Sainz, but yeah, had that incident with Sainz, I put the blame more on him than I do on Carlos Sainz, as I've already explained, as do most people, it seems. But yeah, I thought before that he was doing very well, recovered pretty well to finish up in P12, but yeah, ultimately that one moment not only ruined his own race, but ruined the race for Carlos Sainz. And just quickly going back to Carlos Sainz there, in his interview after the race, seemed what's the word I'm even looking for here, but very upset at Liam Lawson, understandably. But in his interview, he was just saying, like, I race wheel to wheel with everyone, and there's some people you can't race against, and that guy's just one of them. And I thought, very uncalled for in a way. I understand that, you're upset that your race has been ruined by this one person, but, I don't think that you can kind of paints Liam Lawson as this kind of guy who is, a crash-happy lunatic who's going to make a load of mistakes. I don't think that is necessarily accurate. Maybe I'm wrong, but I quite like Liam Lawson. Obviously, he made a mistake here, but I feel like he's getting more confidence within himself again, and hopefully he can turn this round in Italy and go back to scoring some good points. This was not his best race weekend, though. I'm going to give him a 4. Across to the Haas team now, and starting with Ollie Behrman, who had an incredibly underrated drive. So he qualified in 19th place, but changed parts of his engine to start from the pit lane. Then from there would finish up in a magnificent P6. What an incredible recovery drive this was from Ollie Behrman. And if we just let's just take a look here. If I share my screen with you, we can see the lap-by-lap breakdown here of Ollie Behrman. So if we click here, this is him highlighted, starting in P20 because he was starting from the pit lane. Stays there until around lap 6 where he gets past Stroll. Then he gets past Ocon. Stroll and Alonso come up again, so that must have been Colapinto and Hulkenberg pitting. A few different pit stops. From the first safety car period, I don't think he pit there, so he stays out. And then I thought that he was doomed for by staying out, but he manages to stay in P11 for quite some time, even through the second safety car period, to come back again. You just see him here. He's up to 8th place, then he pits under the safety car to go down to 11th, and then fights his way back through again up to P7, another safety car period, finished up in 7th place. What a wonderful race from him. Masterfully done from the Haas strategy side as well. Really, really good stuff from Ollie Behrman. I am obviously going to be giving him a 10 out of 10. It was a really good race from him. And you know what as well? When I did my mid-season driver ratings, he was the second highest rookie on my mid-season driver ratings. I think Hadjar was first, and he was not too far behind. And I thought at the time, oh, that's pretty high for Ollie Behrman. And I quite like Ollie Behrman. I've been quite honest about that ever since we started covering him in F3, F2. He's always been pretty fantastic, and I held him in quite high regard. But I thought, have I maybe been a bit biased there and, giving him additional points when maybe I shouldn't have, and maybe should he be lower than someone else? But then I thought about it a bit more, and for me, he is easily the most consistent rookie. Because you can look at like Isaac Hadjar, who had a tremendous start to the season and obviously had a great race this weekend. But between like Monaco and now, he's been kind of nowhere. And Kimi Antonelli is the same. Very good start to the season, but since Canada to now, he's scored 1 point. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. Bortoleto is the other way. Bortoleto had 10 races in a row at the start of the season, not scoring any points, not really having any tremendous races that can point out and go, well, that's fantastic. Then after that, I think it was the Spanish Grand Prix, when the Sauber got better, he got better and had a great little string of races there. The last 5 or 6 races, Gabriel Bortoleto has been fantastic, but those early races are there. With Ollie Behrman, there's no one race that you can point to and go, that's incredible. Now, you could say this race this weekend, going from the pit lane to finishing up in 6th, or maybe, I think it was his race in China, he gained quite a few positions as well. But for Ollie Behrman, I don't think there's been that one standout race where you go, wow, look at that. But I think he's just been amazingly consistent throughout the entire season. He's putting in really good performances week after week after week. And I think that is why in my mid-season ratings, he was so high, just because he has been the most consistent rookie. You can argue, is he the best rookie, is he not the best rookie? But for me, you can't argue against his consistency. He's always been really, really good, especially in comparison to someone like Ocon, his teammate, who is far more experienced than him. He's still been able to have decent results time after time after time. So yeah, really happy with Ollie Behrman's performance here, and his performance so far this season. Moving across now to his teammate, Esteban Ocon, who also had a decent weekend, to be honest. So Esteban Ocon qualified in 18th place. Not a good qualifying for either Haas driver, really. But he would finish in 10th to score 1 point. I think it is the 3rd time this year that both Haas drivers have scored points in the race. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for decent job from Ocon. Good 1 point. Let's move on to next week. Let's move on to our next driver, who is Franco Colapinto, who has his best result of the season. So he qualified down in 16th place and finished up in P11, just missing out on the 1 point. Now, when I watched his interview after the race, I expected him to be quite happy. You would expect most drivers who have their best result of the year would go into the interview pen quite happy, but Franco Colapinto was not. In fact, when I was watching his interview, for the first half of it, he just has this kind of like faraway stare. He's just staring into the middle distance, not really paying attention. And then when he's actually asked a question, the only thing he really talks about was the moment halfway through the race, or even a quarter of the way into the race, where the Alpine team asked him to swap positions with Gasly. Now, I agree with them asking him to swap positions, because at that point I think Colapinto was starting on the softs, Gasly was on the mediums. At that point in the race, the softs had kind of fallen off a bit, the mediums were coming in to be the faster tyre, swap the cars, the faster cars in front. But it seems to me, and Franco didn't really say much in the interview that I saw, but it seems to me that in his head, he's gone, if they hadn't done that, I would have been in the top 10, I would have got a point, it would have helped me secure my seat here at the Alpine team. That's just me kind of assuming what he's thinking there, because he did not seem overjoyed, and I think he should have been, because this is his best result. P11 is the best he's done so far this year, better than anything Jack Doohan did in the Alpine car as well. We've seen how difficult that car's been. I think 11th place is very, very respectable. Give him an 8. There you go, Franco. Cheer up. Cross to Pierre Gasly now, who I think was a bit screwed over, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Qualified in 14th place, but ended up finishing in 17th. Had a very similar end to Gabriel Bortoleto, where they didn't pit him at the end in that last safety car, and everyone else was much, much faster. Again, if we pull this up here and focus not on Behrman but on Gasly, we can see here, goes from 14th, he's back up into this top 10, then pits, goes down, 14th, climb back up, and then we have here, was it, or was it by, yeah, it must have been by here, yeah. where he's in the top 10, doesn't pit, then once the safety car goes back in, just falls down because everyone else is on far fresher tyres, and he just falls back down to 17th place where he ends up finishing. So, yeah, Alpine, they had a good thing going for a little bit, but they seem to have messed it up, and yeah, not great. Could have done a little bit better, but, again, not Gasly's fault himself, but not much you can do when you're given a strategy like that, especially at the end of the race, the closing moments. I'm going to give him it's hard. I'm going to have to be... It was last, so I mean, it's a 5, isn't it, really? It's a 5. There you go. Across to this man. What an enigma Lance Stroll is. Because looked to be one of the most disappointing weekends of the year. Aston Martin come into this weekend, and from FP1 they look incredibly strong. Lance crashes in practice. He crashes in qualifying. He qualifies 19th. He's promoted. He qualifies 20th. Sorry, he's promoted to 19th because of Ollie Behrman's pit lane start. And you just think, for God's sake, Lance, this is a race weekend where the team looks strong, and you've really, really squandered it here. And then he goes and finishes 7th. Beats Fernando Alonso, gets some really good points. Is back in front of Alonso in the championship once again. Yeah, just really good. And, we're going to have to pull that thing up again. Because, again, I'm not sure how he did it. Because if we look now at Lance Stroll, starting in 19th place, he's beefing with Bortoleto at the start, and Bortoleto loses a bit of his front wing. He pits really, really early, pits on lap 9, is rolling round at the back, then just gets the undercut on literally everyone. Pitting that early, just overtake after overtake after overtake, and then he's up here in P9, and he just keeps it basically until the end of the race, pits again underneath his safety car, fights back again, boom, 8th place. Magic, Lance Stroll. Right, so what are we going to give him for a good race there? The strategy team really, really saved his bacon, but there we go. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Great job, Lance Stroll. Keep it up. Okay, so his teammate now, and Fernando Alonso. And again, not a great qualifying for Alonso. When you saw the pace that Aston came into the race with, you were expecting him to be, top 5? Top 4? Top 3? But he qualified in P10, which was a bit disappointing. And then in the race itself, actually finished 8th, which again, we might as well pull up that thing once again, because at one point he was just down and out, just begging for someone to do something. If we pull up Alonso there, starting in P10, so has a bad start, falls to 13th place, then goes for that early pit stop with Lance Stroll, does pull off a similar undercut to Stroll, but then at this point here is just like, look, we're just stuck in this DRS train. I can't do anything. Please, let's just do something different. Falls back down after the pit stop, then just slowly fights his way up back to 9th, does another pit stop, back to 9th, and that's the end of his race. He's in literally every position between 9th and 20th along this race here. So yes, the Aston pit crew and the Aston strategy team really working overboard this weekend to get some really good points on the board. I'm going to give Alonso a 7 out of 10 for that race overall. But yeah, Aston, it's a weird one because going into the weekend, I expected better from them just because of the pace they were showing early on. But they still did tremendously well and, did well as a team. I think, the way that they made their decisions and the decisions paid off every single time was really good. So yeah, great job Aston Martin, who continue to do very well. And in terms of the championship, the Constructors' Championship, they scored the exact same amount of points as Williams this weekend, so still very close between them. I do think that we've got Racing Bulls behind them. That's pretty close as well. I think that's only 2 points. So that fight for P5 in the championship is hotting up, if that's something anyone actually cares about. Oh dear. Kimi Antonelli, his worst F1 weekend yet, I think. Has the crash in practice. Qualifies P11, so misses out on Q3 yet again. God. Where do we even begin? Starts the race quite well. Gets up there, gets some really good overtakes on the board, is right behind his teammate to the point that when Russell has damage, the team are telling them to swap cars. That's what brings Antonelli to be fighting with Charles Leclerc. Then it was actually Antonelli's early pit stop which convinced the Ferrari team to make Leclerc pit as well. Then we all know what happens. Got a bit overconfident going into turn 3, made the mistake, took out Charles Leclerc, and got a puncture as well as a penalty for causing the collision. Then when he goes in the pits to sort out the puncture, he's speeding in the pit lane, gets another penalty, so 15 seconds worth of penalties for Antonelli on the board, which sees him drop down at the end to 16th place. Really not good. Not a good weekend for Kimi Antonelli. Obviously, there are spots that you can look at and go, well, that's quite good. And like I always say, when you're dealing with young drivers, you're dealing with F1 rookies, you got to look at the peaks rather than the troughs. And the peaks were very good this weekend. You know, for that early portion of the race, he was up there with Russell, which you can't say for Antonelli very often, let's be honest. But from there, it did not go well, and it's going to have to be like a 1 for Antonelli this weekend, because that was really, really not good. Going into his home race next weekend, hopefully can improve, because that wasn't it. Across to George Russell now. Oh, too far. George Russell, there he is. He was very unhappy in his interview after the race. He qualified 5th, finished up in 4th, but yeah, was not happy. I don't think he was happy about the move that Leclerc pulled on him, although I thought it was fun. I thought he'd be a bit happier finishing 4th. I mean, obviously, being beaten by a Racing Bulls car if you're in a Mercedes isn't great, but Isaac Hadjar was just on fire this weekend. So, from that point of view, there's that. I mean, he got damage from Leclerc's move on him. He was not happy to be told to move out the way and let Antonelli pass. But overall, you know, it's just one of those George Russell drives, really. You just go out there, you don't really do too much, come away from good points. I think George will be pretty happy. I'm giving him a 9. Let's move on to Yuki Tsunoda. And my goodness, everyone, the streak is over. Yuki Tsunoda scores 2 points on the weekend, finishing up in P9 after starting in 12th. Now, he was battling with Antonelli quite a lot at the start of the race, and Antonelli would eventually get past him. But, you know, from there, an okay job from Yuki Tsunoda. Not really too much to report. Kept himself to himself, really, and scored some points. The 7-race streak for Yuki Tsunoda is over. Well done. Now make a new streak of scoring points every weekend. We'll see how that goes. I'm giving him a 7, and we're moving on to this man, the Supermax. His home race, qualified in P3, finished up in P2. A tremendous start to the race. Sees him jump Lando Norris off the start, and is wheel-to-wheel going into turn 3, and then somehow, in a way that only Max Verstappen can, turns 2 separate incidents within the space of like 3 seconds, both of which should have certainly ended in a crash. He somehow turned them into an overtake. I don't know how he did it, but he did. He kept Lando Norris behind him for as long as he could, but, you know, the pace of the McLaren was so strong this weekend that, you know, even in his interviews afterwards, they were like, did you expect to stay in front of Lando a bit longer? He's like, no. And then, you know, he knew Lando was going to get past him. I think that's why he didn't fight it too hard when it happened. And then, you know what, he just ran a decent race himself. I mean, you know, he was there at the end of the race, under the safety car, in the soft tyres, behind Oscar Piastri, and you're thinking, can he do something? Can he pull out some last-minute Max Verstappen dive bomb madness and win this race? But ultimately, it was not to be. But still, a P2 for Max Verstappen, I think, is the best he possibly could have had this weekend. So it is a 10 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. And now it's time to talk about Ferrari. And they did not have a good time. Nil points on the board for the Ferrari team. Oh dear. So, neither of the Ferrari boys were happy with their qualifying. Lewis Hamilton qualified in 7th place, Charles Leclerc in P6, but they were both DNF, but for very, very different reasons. So, Lewis Hamilton was quite simple, really. Just made a mistake, went too high out of turn 3, got a wheel on the sponsor banner thing that was on the painted onto the tarmac. It'd been raining a little bit, made it a bit damp, made a mistake, crashed into the wall. Very un-Lewis Hamilton-like. You don't see him really ever make those kinds of mistakes. I mean, just rattling my brain here, and the only similar thing I can think of is in like China 2007, in terms of just like a silly little mistake that ends his race. But yeah, obviously not happy with his performance after the race. 4? I think that's relatively fair for Lewis Hamilton. I mean, Charles Leclerc is a very, very different story, where he also was not happy with his qualifying in P6, but, really good start to get past Russell. And then I think Russell was able to get back past him. Then Leclerc went for that incredible move to get the place back again. Was chasing down Hadjar, was then fighting with Antonelli, and of course we know what happened between him and Antonelli. Not his fault at all. And then he just sat in a sand dune for the rest of the race, and must have nicked someone's phone, because that wouldn't have been his phone. He doesn't carry his phone around with him as he's driving, so stole someone's phone and just listened to a podcast on a sand dune, like some kind of student on a summer holiday. So, maybe he had a good time towards the end. But, I'm going to give him a 7, because I thought he was doing well until it all went wrong. And finally, we go to the McLaren boys, starting with Oscar Piastri, who had pole position, won the race, had fastest lap, and led every single lap. His first ever Grand Slam in Formula One history. Fantastic, fantastic result for him. And in terms of the championship, he could not ask for more, with his nearest rival failing to finish the race. We'll talk more on that in a little bit. But for Oscar Piastri, what else can it be other than a 10 out of 10? The perfect weekend for Oscar Piastri. The weekend of a champion. A weekend where champions are made, and we never know. When we come to the end of the season, Abu Dhabi, we may look back at this weekend and say that was the exact weekend this champion was made. So, there we go. Oscar Piastri, 10 out of 10. Lando Norris qualified in P2, missing out on pole by 0.01 of a second. Very, very close margin between him and Oscar Piastri. Now, as I said, got beaten by Verstappen off the start, but was able to get the place back. At that point was 4 seconds behind Oscar Piastri. Did slowly claw that back, but never was really, for me, in contention to win this race. I don't think there was ever a moment where he actually activated DRS. I think there was brief moments when he was within a second, but it wasn't at the detection point, so was never within DRS of Oscar Piastri. For me, the race always seemed safe for Piastri to win, but I did not expect Lando to not finish this race. Of course, not his fault whatsoever. An engine failure like that can happen to any driver at any time, and it did happen to Lando Norris. So, very upsetting for him to end the race like that. It should have been a P2. It is did not finish, because I think he was classified as like 18th or whatever. But yeah, might as well have been a did not finish. There's a mix here, because there is obvious negatives to what Lando did. Obviously, his starts are still not there. Losing out to Verstappen not once but twice within the first 3 corners is not really on. When you see the pace that the McLaren had, being behind Verstappen for as long as he was and allowing Oscar to run away in that 4-second lead is not really on. But aside from that, he did as well as I think he could, and, it ended not his own fault. But there you go. I'm going to give him a 7. I think that is more than fair to Lando Norris there. So that is our driver ratings. 10s go to Piastri, Verstappen, Ollie Behrman, Isaac Hadjar, and Alex Albon. Lowest score of the day goes to Kimi Antonelli with a 1. Let me know what you think. We're back next week, all things Italian Grand Prix. We're back on Wednesday for the Stop and Go F1 Wednesday Fun Club. I can't wait. I'll see you then. Until next time, goodbye.